G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the Arsehole, where in our first story today, OP kicks his son out because he cuts down all of his sandalwood trees in his backyard while he was on vacation. To pay for what? Who knows? Read on and you'll find out. And with all that said, I hope you enjoy the video. Am I the arsehole for kicking my son out after he cut down my trees? Hi. I am the father of an 18 male who started choosing friends over his future when he was a sophomore. It took him nearly going to jail during senior year for him to snap out of it. He went from being a straight-A student to barely passing. He only started preparing for his SAT a week beforehand, which is evident in the score he got. He applied for some colleges, none of which were his dream ones, and managed to get into a few. He ended up coming to us and choosing one of the worst colleges on his list and saying his friends were going there. That set me off because he should not make decisions based on his friends. My wife and I told him that if he took a year off and continued to get his life back together, regardless of his new SAT score at the end of the year, we would pay for his college. But we wouldn't pay for him to hang out with his friends. He wasn't happy about taking a year off, even though we convinced him a year is nothing in the grand scheme of things, but he didn't mention it for a while. My wife and I went on a 2-week-long trip, and while we were away, nearly 10 trees in our backyard were cut down. They were some sort of sandalwood trees planted only God knows how long ago. We had left our daughter behind with our son, but they stayed a few nights with their uncle, so we instantly thought some random person cut them down to sell them. Our daughter secretly said she has an idea of what happened, but didn't elaborate. Quick security check shows our son hired a company to, badly and hastily, cut the trees, and he cut them into logs and planks with my equipment, and then sold it to strangers. We ended up arguing, him saying he needs money for college. I kicked him out, and he went to stay with another family member. My wife is upset and says I'm awful. I appreciate my son trying, but this was not the right way. Am I the arsehole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the arsehole. I think I might be the arsehole here because I probably should have had a civil conversation with my son and tried to understand why he did what he did instead of getting angry and kicking him out. He is still young, and I should have considered his feelings more. They are honestly just trees anyway. Now in the comments, not the arsehole. Exactly what did he think was going to happen? You wouldn't notice the missing trees? Or that you wouldn't care that he hurt your property for a few bucks? They weren't his trees to sell, and he didn't even ask. There does need to be consequences for that. And also, depending on where you are, sandalwood trees are the property of the government, in India at least, and cannot be cut down without permission or sold on the open market. OP's son clearly lacks the ability to think things through or make good choices. Other places like California have interesting requirements. OP is not the arsehole, son is the arsehole on multiple levels. Good riddance. And edit, I'd also check to see if equipment is missing since OP said he used my equipment. Trees are gone? I bet the equipment is gone as well. And OP replies, thankfully it's not the government after me, but the town council is on my ass asking why the trees were cut down and saying it ruined the aesthetic of a trail behind my house. A conservation committee is also after me for cutting them down and want to know if I understood how photosynthesis works. In all honesty, I don't even blame them, and I agree with what they said. According to a lawyer friend, the most they can do is harass me. The town has offered to foot the bill for some oaks to be put in my backyard, lining the back wall so it looks similar to before. I am currently looking into it, and considering paying half of that bill too, because they seem passionate about the aesthetic they mentioned. The only thing stopping me is the thought that I'll be dead before those oaks fully mature, and also, it would show my son what he did wasn't a big deal and could be easily fixed. You should still do it. This is a long-term decision that will benefit you, generations to come, and even bring back some of the value lost to the house. This is not part of your son's lesson. Perhaps you could make it part by making him pay back gradually. OP replies to their own comment and says, update to the town council's request. They called me early this morning and we spoke for nearly 30 minutes about the tree situation. This time I apologized for inconveniencing them. I brought up paying the entire bill instead of half like I originally thought, but apparently they have grants and stuff that cover a portion. I'll be paying around 70% of the bill, and when I say I mean my son will be paying 70% of the bill just through my name. He will use the money he got from the wood as well as any savings if he needs to. Any money left over is going to be donated by him in person to the Conservation Committee, a scary group of people who are still after me since sandalwood trees aren't a common occurrence. And he'll donate his time as well towards planting trees. My wife and I agreed on this, the first agreement throughout this whole situation, but we haven't told my son yet. We have decided that will be his punishment for the act of cutting down trees for greed. A punishment for cutting down my trees for college and selling it behind my back will come at a later date when we figure out why he did it. On Monday, the town council, myself, and my son, whether he has returned home or not, will head out to look at some oaks and find a good fit for our backyard. Are you really buying that he sold them for college money? Drugs and alcohol seem a lot more likely and would fit his behavior. Your 18-year-old is selling random crap around the house for money? He arranged to have trees removed, made them into wood, and sold them. That is behavior you see in someone with a drug addiction. Seriously, no way was it a good faith effort to pay for college, either junky or bitter, like he knows damn well a couple trees aren't paying for a college. He is just playing dumb to hurt the dad and property. Is your son on drugs or has a debt to be paid? You are not the asshole, but your wife's reaction seems odd. Is there anything being left out of the story? Drugs or alcohol is what I assumed as OP was describing his sudden change in behavior. And OP replies to that, I'm fully aware that my son drinks every time he goes to a party. Not many because of COVID, and I'm fine with it as long as he doesn't return home blackout drunk and he doesn't drive. I was drinking at his age and he knows, so I don't want to be the type of parent advising against something they did, especially if he is doing it responsibly. Drugs, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure he doesn't do. He used to be a competitive swimmer for the longest time, but quit when his behavior started to change. He gave no reason, but my daughter thinks it's related to drug tests some competitions had them do. He never failed one, but that scared me a lot. I randomly asked him once if he would do a drug test if I gave him one, and his deadpan answer of, I don't mind, made me feel like a shitty person. His behavior is never erratic or like someone on drugs. My daughter, who I should mention snitches on him regarding things that I wouldn't know, like school, friends, etc., because she genuinely wants the brother she used to have to come back, says his friend group don't do drugs and barely drink. I don't want to be any more of an overbearing parent than I currently am, so I don't think I will ever make him do something like that to prove his words. And I would read out the rest, but that's like another 5 to 10 minutes of reading with back and forth with commenters, and OP realizing, oh my god, he may just be on drugs and be really good at hiding it. So there's a little bit more context of that chain of comments. And now, onto the update. So it's been a while since the last post, and a lot of things have happened. Thanks a lot for everyone's input. It really helped give insight on my son and I's behavior, and helped when making decisions moving onward. An important thing to start with is, we got mature oaks planted. There were 6 of them put in, and they look amazing already. They cost a fortune, a crazy fortune. The money my son got from the sandalwood covered around half the price, and I coughed up the remaining. Despite paying for them, they belong to the Conservation Committee who are, understandably, upset about the previous tree being cut down. The oaks can't be cut down, and they will be coming annually to check on how the trees are doing. Now on to my son. In my previous post, I mentioned that his punishment for cutting down trees purely for money was to use said money for the new trees and formally apologize to the Conservation Committee, as well as donate his time to them for a year. The money has been spent, and he apologized. The apology was quite embarrassing. The Conservation Committee aren't a joke. They treated him harshly. For the past 2 weeks, he has been working alongside them, planting trees and bushes, landscaping the park, artificial habitats, and more. Surprisingly, The committee started liking my son and offered him an official job starting September, which he is taking. After realizing the reason for my son's misbehavior was mental issues, his punishment for disrespecting my property was changed to agreeing to everything I do regarding him getting help. After seeing a therapist, I was told my son has been silently suffering with a form of trauma for around 8 years. I only found out after family counseling that the cause of his trauma was from seeing my ex-wife cheating on me and then being manipulated by her for years after. Needless to say, my ex does not live with me anymore. I feel so stupid for not seeing it earlier. I don't even care about the cheating, but how did I not realize my ex babying my son was just a front? Anyway, my son is doing slightly better and has picked up swimming again. He has agreed to a gap year and will be retaking his SAT. He also dropped his friends and took a drug test that showed nothing weird. It's too early to be happy, but I am. Everyone has been more open since my ex left. My son has made it his goal to get into his dream college for architecture, while my daughter wants to go to a music festival. I don't think there is anything left to add. For people wondering, my son made nearly $35,000 from the wood. Thanks again, and I hope you have a nice day. Now in the comments, it sounds like it all worked out in the end at least. Silver linings and all that. I'm glad your son is getting the help he needed and is excited about his future plans. Own the happiness. Your son is doing better, the tree issue was resolved, and he impressed the conservation committee enough to secure what I'm guessing is a pretty good job. Wishing him all the best with his college quest. And he may have found an area to go into, landscaping/environment for a career, or at least a wonderful hobby that he is good at and can be proud of. Thank you for the update, and I'm so glad he is getting helped. OP, I am happy for your son getting help. I am also confused. The wife you mentioned in your first post, you found out that she was having an affair? And she was shielding him from experiencing consequences about the sandalwood trees because she knew he had intel about her affair since he caught her. And OP replies, yes. According to my son, my ex knew my son was aware of her affair and spent years manipulating him into believing he would ruin everyone's life if he spoke out about it, as well as blaming the whole situation on him. On the surface though, she treated him like a spoiled child, buying him things constantly, preventing him from taking responsibilities for his actions, etc. She was the first one to say I shouldn't have kicked my son out over the trees. Hope that clears things up. I hope your daughter is also getting some therapy. If nothing else, she probably has a lot of resentment and confusion from the way her mother treated her versus her brother for the last several years. And OP replies, hey there, you make a great point. My daughter is also in therapy, as well as family counseling, the three of us do. She doesn't feel comfortable sharing what they talk about, so I don't force it out of her. But I still try my best to let her know that my son isn't the only person I'm thinking about right now. While I'm sorry the reason is so sad, I am glad your son is getting the help he needs. I imagine everything being out in the open is a huge burden lifted for him. Ray's Underwater says, I don't know how this could happen all in 22 days since your original post, especially losing your wife. And OP replies, hey there, I'm not sure if this clears it up, but in the update, I just said my ex doesn't live with us anymore. We aren't even legally separated yet, let alone divorced. I'm hardly going to be calling the woman my wife after everything. Anyway, the house is technically mine, so she's no longer welcome, and I'm still talking to lawyers about the situation. Hope that helps. And back to that comment, edit to add, you had an official body like the Heritage Council consider the situation, approve the new type of tree, agree to the punishment, and have him do enough volunteering with him in 22 days that they offered him a position? I've worked with Heritage Councils. You're lucky to get a decision in 2 months, let alone so much action. After the council deliberated and supposedly decided on a tree, you were able to locate mature or semi-mature trees. Saplings wouldn't have looked awesome. Find someone to transplant them and schedule to get it done within 22 days. And back to OP's reply, edit reply, hi again. I think you might have missed some points between my update and original post. The best way I think I can explain is that I made the post 22 days ago, but I kicked my son out 28 days ago. I mentioned in the original that it had been a week since everything happened. Conservation Committee had also been in contact with me 2 days after the trees were cut. Maybe this is all still confusing. I'm not sure if I can make it more clear. I assume every committee is different, but the town council were already on their side about having new trees put in, mentioned in original, and I doubt the committee had to wait longer than 24 hours to get approval on anything. Hope that clears it up. Have a nice weekend. And our next post is titled, "Am I the asshole for forcing my son to do some sort of research on our daughter's condition?" I, 41 female, have 2 kids, 12 female and 15 male. My daughter has a condition called endometriosis, and for those unaware, it's a condition in which the uterus tissue doesn't grow properly, and due to this, periods can become much worse. For those aware of the condition, if you are wondering, I have a friend who is a gynecologist who was able to help us. I say this because of how hard this condition is to diagnose normally. My son has never taken it seriously and has said things along the lines of, "She needs to suck it up," or "She needs to stop being so obnoxious," in reference to groaning noises. I have told him to stop and threatened punishment, but I let him slide as I attributed it to virtual school stress and, as of late, finals stress, and he has made these comments to me, so it wasn't as big of an issue. At the end of last month, their school ended, yet he still made this comment today. So I told him that he needs to research and learn about the condition for this entire week, or the next one, so that he learns to be more sympathetic. He was upset by this and said that he didn't want to, and I told him that he had to, and he groaned and went to go do it. Yet my husband, 43 male, said that this was unreasonable, and even if it was a reasonable punishment, forcing him to do research isn't going to help. I told my husband that I wasn't forcing him to be sympathetic, I was forcing him to learn about the pain. We argued for a bit before my husband told me that I was too stubborn and walked away. Now I feel that forcing him may have been a bad decision, as it is a bit unreasonable, and it won't have much of an effect. So am I the asshole? Now in the comments, not the asshole. Perhaps your husband should also do some research with your son. It might be good for the both of them. Not the asshole. I think that is a completely reasonable punishment for this scenario. Making him learn something is not cruel and unusual by any means. Your husband should really be more understanding. Maybe he needs to do some research himself, then he'd understand how screwed up his son's actions are. Honestly, it is barely a punishment. It's a lesson. I think it's a great first step to try and help his attitude, and if it doesn't work, then she can go to punishment territory. I was looking for this comment. Instead of taking away his privileges and likely making the tension worse between him and his sister, she chose to have him learn about the condition so he can get a look into what his sister experiences. The main issue I see isn't OP's parenting skills, it's the fact her husband is not on the same page as her and is likely where his son is getting this attitude from. Not the asshole. Your son reminds me of people that tell women suffering from pain during their periods to stop being dramatic, or when someone runs out of pads and their parents or partners are slow and reluctant to help them get products, say something stupid like, "Hold it in till I bring it home." If your son has ever been ill or injured and cried or made sounds over it, I'm pretty sure nobody in the home ever told him to suck it up. He isn't pain's gatekeeper, and he doesn't get to tell someone how much pain they're allowed to be in. Even if he doesn't gain sympathy from this, he should be made aware that complaining about someone suffering will not be tolerated under any circumstances, testing, working, or whatever he thinks is acceptable. And now on to the update. It's been about 2 months since my original post, and I would like to thank you all for the loving and supportive comments. I talked with my husband about what he felt was inherently wrong with our son researching, and he said he at first kind of found it weird to be a feminine issue, and making our son deeply research it was weird. We talked it out, and it started to make him realize why it wasn't weird, and why it was pretty necessary. He started to realize where he was wrong and talked to our son about it. After they talked it out, my son was able to realize why he was wrong and where he went wrong. He also quite enjoys music from the singer Halsey, who also happens to have endometriosis. And after reading her story along with many others, he became much more empathetic. I also realized that 1 week was excessive and let him go at his own pace as long as he was making progress, which he did. Nowadays, he's caring and helpful towards my daughter when she's in pain, and their bond has strengthened through it. I would like to thank you again for all the support. Now in the comments, yeah, the whole feminine issue thing always seemed weird to me. Not for endometriosis per se, but just dismissing their anatomical reality. That's like basically saying half the population isn't worth understanding and empathizing with. Imagine the opposite. Oh, I don't want my daughter learning about how much it hurts for men to be kicked in the nads. That's a masculine issue. Whilst the son is groaning in pain, and she's rolling her eyes and making unhelpful comments. It is just ridiculous that the father would dismiss his daughter's pain as simply an issue for women. Like, that's his daughter. It should be his issue entirely. Yeah, and they're lucky it wasn't me. I'd have made him write an essay about it too, and as for the dad, any health issues should be discussed openly and without embarrassment, no matter what the gender, as long as the person is okay with it. As someone who has endo, this update is awesome. I'm so glad that your son and your husband have a much better understanding of what your daughter is going through. Next step, have them realize endo can cause pain all month from the lining attaching to random organs. Can also cause loads of random issues like insulin resistance and issues conceiving. Endo is a horrible condition that can affect so many aspects of your life, and she's going to need her family's support if she ends up getting a bad case of it. Oh my god, the fun facts just keep rolling in. Did you know that it can damage your intestines by penetrating them and growing inside them? I had to have a total hysterectomy, and while they were in there, they had to remove endometriosis from the exterior of my intestines where it was trying to work its way in. Some people lose sections of their intestines, and it's very hard to find and often misdiagnosed. And that's where I'm going to end the episode today, right on the really morbid reality of endometriosis. I didn't know this before. Another fun fact I learnt today was that Brazil nuts are the only allergens that you can sexually transmit to someone else. So if one of your consenting parties has a nut allergy, wrap it before you tap it if you've had Brazil nuts. Anyway, that's where I'm going to end it today, guys. I hope that you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.